Yo, what's up guys? It's Noah here, and in today's video, we're going to be breaking down the Week 14 Monday Night Football Showdown slate on Draftkings. Got Week 14 closing out Monday night with the Ravens and the Browns. Should actually be a pretty fun game. Should be a close game as well. This game coming in with a 46 total, just a 2-point or 3-point spread as well. So expect to be somewhat high scoring, not the most high scoring game, but 46 total, 3-point spread. Should make for a pretty fun showdown slate. I have been looking at this slate before I started recording. It is pretty tough. There's not a lot of value that you're going to feel great about. Guys like these cheap receivers like Dante Peoples-Jones, the backup running backs, Miles Boykin, Devin Duvernay, like these are obviously guys we're not going to feel great about rostering, but it's just one of those slates where the value is pretty thin. There's not a ton of cheap plays that are going to project very well. Willie Snead is back from the COVID list, so that's going to throw things into a wrench as well. I've been playing Duvernay and Boykin on these showdown slates, but now those guys are going to become a little bit tougher to roster. They are cheap, but it's a tough slate. With the value, with the minimal amount of value that we have, it does make roster construction a little bit tough. We'll talk about roster construction towards the end of the video. We'll take a look at some lineup builds that I do like. We'll try and find some cheap plays that I think at least have some upside, can at least, potentially make the winning lineup. But before we do get started with the video, guys, as always, I'd appreciate it if you'd hit that like button down below. If you are new to the channel here, be sure to click the subscribe button as well. I do upload a ton of NFL content to this YouTube channel every week. I also will be making NBA videos daily once the NBA regular season gets here in about a week or two. I believe it starts on the 22nd, so pretty much next week, next Tuesday I believe it is when the NBA season starts. I'm going to be making NBA videos daily once the NBA season starts on next Tuesday. You guys have shown a lot of support on my NBA videos. You've just been so supportive on the channel when it comes to NBA. Very excited for NBA season to get here. It's definitely one of my favorite sports to provide content for and to play as well. So I'm excited for that. I'll still be making NFL content though as well, even when NBA season gets here. So I'm going to have a ton of videos coming out on the channel pretty soon. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell, so that way you never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos, and if they do help you out a lot, you can check out my exclusive content on Patreon. I do have more to offer on Patreon than just the videos that I post on YouTube. So if that is something that does interest you, it is obviously optional. But for those of you that are interested, the Patreon is linked down below in the description. But let's go ahead and take a look at this slate. We will start off at the top. We'll just touch on the two quarterbacks first. We got Lamar Jackson coming in at 11,800, and then we got Baker Mayfield coming in at 10,000, assuming you play them in the flex. So starting off with Lamar Jackson, he is obviously one of the top plays on the showdown slate. If you look at any sort of projections, I'm sure he's going to come in as probably the highest projected player on the slate, and for good reason. Lamar, he's definitely had an up and down season without a doubt. I mean, this was a guy that was just putting up 25, 30 Draftkings points every single week last year. Obviously, that hasn't been the case this season. We've seen the floor on Lamar is much lower this year than it was last year. But this is still a guy that has a very big ceiling. I mean, he only threw for 100 yards last Tuesday night against Dallas, and he still had 26 Draftkings points. Like, that just kind of shows you the upside that Lamar has. He doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to really hit his ceiling. He can give you, 200 passing yards, 2 passing touchdowns, and then he can run for 70 yards and 2 touchdowns. Like, the rushing upside, that's obviously why we roster Lamar. And, for fantasy, getting quarterbacks that are this mobile, that have the potential to get 80, 90, 100 rushing yards, it just makes them so valuable for DFS. So obviously Lamar is a really good play here. This Browns team also, they're much easier to throw on. Their pass defense hasn't been nearly as good as their run defense this year. So I'm not really going out on a limb here. Lamar is clearly one of the best plays on this slate. It's just a matter of, if you can fit him in, which it's a little bit tough. The value's not great, but I think we're going to want to get Lamar in. Even if he has somewhat of a floor game, and let's say Lamar only scores 16, 17 DK points, like there's a good chance he still makes the winning lineup, even if he does post somewhat of a floor game. You normally are always going to want to get one of the two quarterbacks in, and definitely if I can only choose one, I do prefer to go to Lamar. I don't mind Baker Mayfield here. He has definitely had a very, very low floor this season. We've seen Baker Mayfield just completely, kind of fall out at times, just have games where he really doesn't do anything, just maybe throws for 200 yards, no touchdowns. Like, he definitely has a low floor for a quarterback. We've seen, 3 games this year under 10 Draftkings points, or actually 4 games this year under 10 Draftkings points, which is kind of something you don't really see with starting quarterbacks. Baker still has somewhat of a ceiling, though. We saw that last week. He definitely ran good in terms of the touchdowns. Normally, this is a Browns team that runs the ball a ton, and you'll see games where Nick Chubb has 2 touchdowns, and that's really all that the Browns offense does in terms of touchdowns. But last week, they just put up a ton of points. Baker had 4 passing touchdowns. I believe Nick Chubb had a rushing touchdown as well. Like, they just played so well last week. We saw Baker have a really big game against Tennessee. Obviously, this is not as good of a spot here against a good Ravens defense, but it's a showdown slate. We don't have really many options to go to. I always want to play at least one of the 2 quarterbacks, and a lot of times I'm trying to play both quarterbacks. I think this is going to be a slate where I want to try and get in both quarterbacks. Even though Baker has a lot lower floor than most QBs do, I mean, he can still throw for 250 yards, multiple touchdowns, give you 15, 16 DK points, which could be good enough on this slate. I don't know if we're going to see a ton of guys, put up massive games. Just given how both of these teams are defensively, I think we could see this game maybe be a little bit lower scoring than expected. The 46 total was kind of surprising to me. I thought it'd come in a little bit lower than that. So for that reason, I like both quarterbacks. If I can only choose one, I'd rather go to Lamar, but I have a feeling I will have a good amount of exposure to both Lamar and Baker Mayfield. Then you got Nick Chubb sandwiched in between them. You got Nick Chubb coming in at 10,200. So since returning from injury in Week 10, I mean, Nick Chubb's been awesome. He's had 100 rushing yards or at least 1 touchdown in every game since coming back from injury. 4 straight games with at least 14 Draftkings points. Obviously, this is one of the tougher matchups that he has had since coming back, against this Ravens defense that is pretty solid against the run. I think on this slate, I'd probably rather go to Baker Mayfield over Nick Chubb. That's just me personally. I would definitely rather play Lamar over Nick Chubb. Chubb is always a guy you can consider. He does feel a little bit overpriced, though, for 10,200. The fact that Baker's coming in cheaper than Chubb does make me prefer Baker. I think Baker is more likely to have success. I think Baker's more likely to throw for 200 yards and 2 touchdowns rather than Nick Chubb running for 100 yards and a touchdown. I do prefer Baker over Chubb. Nick Chubb's a guy that, at this point, it seems like he's matchup proof. Like, he's going to go out there and get the carries. He's going to get 15 to 20 carries. He hasn't been getting a ton of work in the passing game this year, which is something that is a bit of a concern. This is a guy that would at least see a few targets. I mean, he's had some games with just 1 target this year. He's had some games with 0 targets. The pass game usage is a concern for me. He's going to have to score a touchdown to really hit his ceiling, if not score multiple touchdowns. So for that reason, I'd rather just play Baker for 10K. I'd rather just go to Baker for a little bit of savings. I think Baker even probably projects better than Nick Chubb does. Then you got Jarvis Landry at 9,400. This is a guy that has definitely really come onto the scene the last 2 weeks. We saw, at least my thought was whenever Odell Beckham, got injured for the season, we were going to see Jarvis Landry really turn things on, start to have some big games, and it kind of took him a while, but the last 2 games, he's looked really good. He's seen double-digit targets in both games, 11 targets, 10 targets, 31 and 20 Draftkings points. He scored a touchdown in 2 straight games. He has clearly been the number 1 receiver for the Browns. He's definitely been the guy that Baker Mayfield seems to rely on the most. At 9,400, though, like that is a very expensive price tag for Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis Landry is a guy that still has a pretty low floor. Sure, he has a ceiling. He can go for 100 yards and a touchdown, but he could definitely bottom out and give you 4 catches for 40 yards, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. On a single-game showdown slate, you can definitely play Jarvis Landry, but he feels like someone I'll probably be a bit underweight on. I just think he's a little bit too expensive. The fact that he's had 2 really good games, they've kind of, raised his price. You've seen that on the showdown slate. If you're playing the 2-game Sunday-Monday slate or the Monday-Thursday slate, the 2-game slate, like Jarvis Landry has been priced up there as well. For that reason, I'll probably be looking elsewhere. It's not like it's the greatest matchup either. The Ravens do have a good defense. They have a good secondary. Like, if I'm going to target any Cleveland pass catchers, I'll probably just try and play, like, the tight ends maybe with Austin Hooper. Not expect to play. We could get some value there with Harrison Bryant or with David Njoku. You could maybe take a shot on Rashad Higgins or Peoples-Jones, one of those 2 guys. So probably going to be underweight on Jarvis Landry at 9,400. Just feels a little bit too expensive for me. Mark Andrews is making his return off the COVID list. He's missed, I believe, their last 2 games, but he's expected back for this game on Monday night. Mark Andrews, another guy that hasn't had as good of a year this year as he did last year, kind of similar to Lamar Jackson, but this is still an every down tight end, a guy that's going to get a lot of volume, going to see probably 6 to 8 targets. We know his touchdown upside, his touchdown equity is very, very high. Like, when they get down to the red zone, they look to Mark Andrews a lot. We saw in Week 1, He did have 2 touchdowns against this Browns team, 6 targets, 5 catches, 58 yards, and 2 touchdowns, 22 Draftkings points. The Browns have always been a team that's kind of struggled against tight ends, so I think it is a pretty good matchup for Andrews. He's 8,800, which is a pretty hefty price tag. Between him or Jarvis Landry, I think that's a big decision point you'll have to make. Like if you're hand-building lineups, choosing one of those two guys. I think I do prefer Andrews just for the savings. I don't mind either. I think both will be in my player pool if I'm playing a lot of lineups. But if I'm just like hand-building one lineup and I have 9,400 left, I don't know that I would just plug in Landry. I think I'd actually rather play Andrews for $600 less. I do like the matchup for Andrews. I'm not really worried about him, being on the COVID list, his first game back. I assume he's going to be full go. He's going to play his full allotment of snaps. So at 8,800 against the Browns team that has always seemed to struggle against tight ends, I do like Mark Andrews here. J.K. Dobbins, tougher matchup for him against this Browns run defense. The Browns have kind of been good against the run just always, and definitely this year they've been solid against the run. I played Derrick Henry against Cleveland last week. That obviously did not go well. But on this single game showdown slate, I do like J.K. Dobbins here. It's so hard to predict on a weekly basis what this Ravens backfield is going to look like. Dobbins, it seems like, is their number one guy right now, but even last week against Dallas, he only got 11 carries. They still involved Gus Edwards a good amount. They still involved Mark Ingram a good amount. I think Ingram got like 5 or 6 carries. Same for Gus Edwards as well. I wish they would just give Dobbins like a true workhorse role, let him play 60, 70, 80% of the snaps, and just, give him 20 touches a game. This is a very explosive back, a guy that's, really efficient with his carries. He seems to average 4 to 5 yards a carry almost every game. It's tough to predict what this Ravens backfield is going to look like on a weekly basis, but, I said it last week and I'm going to say it again. If I'm going to target someone from this Ravens backfield, it's definitely going to be J.K. Dobbins. At 8,200, he's so closely priced to Mark Andrews that I think I'd rather play Mark Andrews. I like the matchup more for Andrews as well. But Dobbins, if I'm going to target a running back from Baltimore, it is, definitely going to be him. Even though Ingram and Edwards are really, really cheap, I just don't see the reason to go to them. They're definitely touchdown dependent. And, you're just kind of hoping to luck box into like a goal line TD if you roster one of those two guys. So I just rather would go to Dobbins if I'm going to target any of those 3 running backs. But honestly, the running backs in this game, I'll probably be underweight on as a whole. I don't love any of the running backs. I'm definitely more interested in the passing game on both sides. But we do have Hollywood Brown at 7,400. I think this is definitely one of my favorite guys in the mid-range. I think Hollywood Brown is someone I will be considering as a mid-range kind of captain play you can pair with Lamar Jackson. We saw Hollywood have a solid game last week against Dallas, a good matchup. 5 catches, 39 yards, and a touchdown on 8 targets. He's seen 8 targets in 2 straight games. He's another guy that's been up and down this year. Really, this Ravens, passing offense as a whole is hard to trust on a weekly basis, but on a single game showdown slate, it's not like we can really just fade the Ravens. We have to roster some of these guys. I like the passing game here. I like Hollywood. I like Mark Andrews. I think those are the guys I'm going to be looking to rather than someone like J.K. Dobbins, rather than paying up for someone like Nick Chubb. I do like Hollywood, and I do like Mark Andrews. Hollywood at 7,400. Look, he's still got the upside. I know he hasn't had the best year overall, but this is still a guy that can give you, 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown pretty much any week. Cleveland secondary, I know they've been dealing with injuries a lot this season. I think Denzel Ward's been banged up throughout the year. I think he's banged up right now. Not exactly sure if he's going to play for this game, but I like Marquise Brown here. I think the way you attack this Browns team is through the air with receivers, with quarterbacks, and that's definitely one of the ways I'm going to be approaching this. So I do like Hollywood at 7,400. He's one of my favorite targets in that mid-range, and I think as a captain play, he gives you the upside to be a guy that could make the winning lineup at captain. So overall, he's definitely a guy I'm going to be targeting a lot in that mid-range. Kareem Hunt, he's seen his price kind of plummet, 7,200. He's been not great the last few weeks. The volume's still been there. I mean, he's seen 14, 10, and 17 touches over their last 3 games. He hasn't been very efficient, though, just 9, 6, and 8 Draftkings points. I wouldn't say he's seeing similar touches to Nick Chubb, but, I would say it's a 60-40 split leaning in favor of Chubb. I think Chubb has been around 20 touches per game in their last 3, whereas Hunt's been around 14 to 15 touches. I guess if you force me to roster one of the Browns running backs, I think I'd actually rather take the savings, take the $3,000 savings and just play Kareem Hunt. Kareem Hunt, if he's going to get 15, 16 touches, it seems like what they're going to give him most weeks. I mean, we know this is a Browns team that wants to run the ball a ton. I don't know how effective they are going to be running the ball against this Ravens team, but I guess if you do force me to play a Browns running back, it would probably be Kareem Hunt. But really, I think I'm going to be underweight on the running game from Cleveland as a whole. I'm going to be underweight on Chubb, and I'm probably going to be underweight on Kareem Hunt. I said it earlier, I like Baker Mayfield. I'd rather play him over Nick Chubb. I don't mind Landry. We're going to talk about, some of these cheap tight ends you could consider from Cleveland with Hooper out. Rashad Higgins is someone I guess you could consider at 6,200. He's been so up in the air this year. Definitely a guy that has big play potential, I guess, but, still has a very low floor. Rashad Higgins could easily give you 6 DraftKings points. The upside, I guess, is still there. We saw him get 9 targets last week. He had one of his best games of the season with 6 catches for 95 yards and a touchdown on those 9 targets. He's probably not someone that I'm going to be rostering too much of. I just think he's a little bit too expensive. If he was like 4K, 5K, then maybe I would be in consideration of him. But at 6,200, he really needs to score a touchdown to be like a guy you kind of have to have at that price tag. And we know, Rashad Higgins this year, he's shown that, he can give you 2 catches, 20 yards pretty much any week. I really don't want to go to him at 6,200. I think he's going to be a guy that I'm probably going to be underweight on just as a whole. I don't see myself really rostering much of him. And then once we get below 6K, once we get to under the backup quarterbacks, you got Willie Snead at 5,800. Another guy making his return off the COVID list, him and Mark Andrews. So Willie Snead, three of the last 4 games he's played, he's seen at least 7 targets in 3 of those 4 games. Another guy that does have a very low floor. Pretty much all these Ravens pass catchers have a very low floor because we've seen games where they just, they can all put up 5, 6, 7 DraftKings points. Willie Snead is kind of similar to Rashad Higgins, whereas he's not very cheap. He's 5,800. It's not like he's 3K, 4K. If he was priced down there, then maybe I would be considering. But I think the floor on Willie Snead is just too low, and I don't think the ceiling is high enough to where I would want to roster him at 5,800. Obviously, if he scores 2 touchdowns like he did against the Patriots, then he's going to be a guy that you kind of have to have. But does Willie Snead? Will Willie Snead score 2 touchdowns again in a game rest of the season? Probably not. So for that reason, I'll probably be avoiding Willie Snead. Both him and Rashad Higgins just feel kind of overpriced to me, to the point where their price tags are a little bit too high. The floor is too low on both those guys to where I would want to pay that much for them. Austin Hooper is out, or he's not expected to play, so we will talk about both Harrison Bryant and David Njoku, 2 guys that we can consider for value. Gus Edwards, I probably won't be considering. Last week he got 7 carries for 100 yards. He was incredibly efficient. You don't expect him to average 14 yards per carry again, so I'm not going to be rostering Gus Edwards at 5,200. Dante Peoples-Jones at 4,800. Just another guy that you need a big play. You need a long touchdown. He got a 75-yard touchdown last week. You're going to need that from him. He doesn't get enough volume to where he's someone you're going to feel confident rostering. These are guys I guess you could consider as dart throw, tournament plays, just hope for a long touchdown. But, 4,800, it's not like Peoples-Jones is free. He's still expensive. So, yeah, I'm probably not going to be rostering him either. The defenses, I tend to be underweight on the defenses. It's burned me sometimes, and then sometimes it's worked out. Obviously, if, one of these defenses gets a pick 6 or a scoop and score, then I'm probably going to lose because, if that happens, you're probably going to need one of the 2 defenses to win. But defenses just have such a low floor. Even though these defenses are somewhat cheap, 4,400 for the Ravens D, 4K for the Browns defense, I just don't really see myself rostering either one. I'd rather just play maybe even the kickers, I think, give you a little bit of a higher ceiling. Even Harrison Bryant, you could maybe look to at 4,200, especially given how much both of these 2 teams want to run the ball. How much are we going to see Lamar Jackson drop back? How much are we going to see Baker Mayfield drop back? If those guys aren't throwing the ball 40 times, then it's hard for either defense to get, pick 6s or sack fumbles, scoop and scores. I just don't really see myself rostering either defense, at least not, a large amount. I'm usually always underweight on the defenses on these showdown slates. But Harrison Bryant, we have at 4,200. DraftKings did a good job of boosting up his price tag. He's not, free like he probably would have been had this news came out later. Austin Hooper is not expected to play. It looks like he's going to be out. And we saw in week 7 and 8, whenever Hooper was out, Bryant did play. I believe he played 70% of the snaps in week 7 and 80% in week 8. He did have a big game week 7 with Hooper out, 4 catches, 56 yards, and 2 touchdowns on 5 targets. And then week 8 against the Raiders, he didn't do much, just 3 targets, 3 catches for 25 yards. We're going to see a lot of 2 tight end sets. We're definitely going to see Bryant a good amount. We're going to see David Njoku on the field a good amount as well. Bryant got priced up to 4,200, but David Njoku is only 1K. So for that reason, if I have to roster a Cleveland tight end, I think Bryant projects a little bit better, but Njoku is so much cheaper. I'd rather just roster Njoku at 1K and just, kind of hope he gets me a touchdown. I mean, in week 7 and 8, he also saw 3 targets in both games. With Hooper out, he did get a touchdown in week 7, 2 catches, 20 yards, and a TD on 3 targets. I think whenever Hooper was out week 7 and 8, you had Njoku play about 60% of the snaps in those games, and then you had Bryant play about 70 to 80%. It's probably going to be something similar to that for this game. But given that, Njoku is so much cheaper, I mean, he's the guy that I prefer. We could see the touchdown go to either one. Cleveland does. I wouldn't say they involve their tight end much, but, I would say that probably Harrison Bryant's more likely to play the Austin Hooper role. He's probably the safer guy, but he's also the more expensive guy. And on these showdown slates, especially this one where we're needing value, I'd rather just roster Njoku for cheaper. Hope that he catches the touchdown instead of Bryant. And if it happens, I mean, it's going to pay off in a big way. I do like Njoku quite a bit as a value play. I mean, both him and Bryant are touchdown dependent. So when you get 2 guys that are touchdown dependent, when one of them's 4,200 and one of them's only 1K, I mean, I'll just roster the guy that's 1K and then hope that he scores the touchdown. So between the 2 Cleveland tight ends, I do prefer David Njoku, just given the price savings, assuming that Austin Hooper is out, which it looks like is going to be the case. But then you got like the kickers. You got Tucker, Parkey. You can play one of the 2 kickers. I don't mind that, especially on this slate since we don't have a ton of great value. I guess if I had to play one of the 2 kickers, I'd probably rather play Tucker just because I think he's the better kicker. He's more likely to make long field goals, but either way, you could play one of the 2 kickers. I don't mind that. Mark Ingram, probably not going to be going there. Last week, got 6 carries and 1 reception. I mean, he's clearly like their 3rd string running back at this point. You're going to need a touchdown from him to be a guy you have to have at 2,800, so I'll be fading Mark Ingram. Miles Boykin, he caught a touchdown last week, but he's going to be really hard to trust now that Willie Snead's back. Plus, he got priced up to $2,200. It's not like he's $200. It's not like he's the minimum salary. At $2,200, I think Boykin's just a little bit too expensive for me, especially now that Snead is expected to play and is expected to be back. Kind of the same with Duvernay. I mean, both these guys, Duvernay and Boykin, they'll probably see 2 to 3 targets. Both of them are going to need to score a touchdown to be a guy you have to have in the winning lineup. That's just going to be too hard to predict. I mean, if you're going to force me to roster someone under 3K, it is definitely going to be David Njoku at just 1K. I mean, he's my favorite value. Just talking about like punt value plays. But really, guys, I think we covered everything, like all the playable options. I mean, there's not really anyone else I see below Njoku that I want to go to. Like the Browns did get Marvin Hall off of waivers, but we don't exactly know what his role is going to be. He wasn't activated, so I believe he is expected to be active for this game. Who knows, like, how many snaps he's going to play? I mean, when he was with the Lions this year, I mean, he had some games where he would see 3, 4, 5 targets, especially once Galladay got injured. But now that he's with the Browns, like, what is his role going to be? We don't really know. I mean, he is expected to be active at least, so I guess at $200, he's not the worst, just straight up punt play. Hope he gets, 4 catches, 40 yards, and, could make the winning lineup potentially. But really, that's just a guy that I'm not too confident in. If I'm confident, I'm not confident really in anyone under 4K, but if I had to pick somebody, it would definitely be David Njoku at 1,000. But yeah, guys, I think we covered the player pool. I think we talked about like all the playable options. So let's go ahead and hit on roster construction just real quick before we do end the video. Kind of talk about how I'm looking to build out my lineups. Definitely a tough slate with, not a ton of great value that really projects too well. Not a lot of those cheap receivers down there that you expect to see much volume. So it makes it tough. It's definitely going to be tough to pay up at captain. If I can pay up at captain, Lamar Jackson is by far, I think, my favorite pay up option at captain. Normally, I don't pay up for quarterbacks in the captain spot, but Lamar Jackson's just, he's just a different breed. He's a guy that can get there with his rushing upside. He doesn't have to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to hit his ceiling. I do like Lamar at captain, but I think given the minimal value, it may be tough to pay all the way up for him. So looking to maybe this mid-range could be a way to go. I talked about Marquise Brown earlier. I do like him a lot at 11,100 as a captain play. Definitely has the upside to be in the winning lineup at captain. He still has a low floor, obviously. Pretty much all these Ravens pass catchers do. But if there's a guy that could go for 100 yards and a touchdown on this Ravens team, if it's not Mark Andrews, then it's definitely Marquise Brown. And given his mid-range price point, given the, we kind of need to pay down a little bit, I do like him a lot as a captain play. If I'm playing Marquise Brown at captain, and I am assuming that he has a big game. I want to pair him with Lamar Jackson because if Marquise Brown has a big game, that means Lamar Jackson is contributing to that. So I want to correlate my lineups that way. And regardless, I'm probably going to be playing a ton of Lamar Jackson anyway. Even if I didn't have Brown at captain, like Lamar's probably going to be in almost every lineup that I make, just because I think the chances of him not being in the winning lineup are really slim. I think even if he has a floor game, puts up 15, 16 points, like we could definitely still see Lamar make the winning lineup. So I want to try and get him in, even with, or because I have Hollywood at captain, I obviously want to get Lamar in, but even if I didn't, I would probably still want to try and get Lamar. Maybe we can try and get Baker Mayfield into this lineup, try and play both quarterbacks. If we plug in Mayfield, that does leave us $5,700 remaining per player for our last 3 spots. I'll plug in David Njoku as a punt value. I think he's my favorite punt value under 4K. I'm not confident in Njoku. He's definitely touchdown dependent, but we really don't have a ton of great value that projects too well. This is definitely one of those slates where I think the kickers are going to project really well just because none of these receivers or pass catchers really project well. But Njoku is a guy I'm fine taking a risk on. Hope he scores a touchdown. I mean, he's going to be on the field a good amount, especially if Hooper doesn't play, which is expected. I know Harrison Bryant played more than Njoku whenever Hooper was out earlier this year, but Harrison Bryant's 4,200. If Harrison Bryant was 1K, I probably would play Harrison Bryant, but because they priced him up and they left Njoku way down there, I just would rather go to Njoku. Once we do plug in Njoku, that leaves us about 8K remaining per player for our last 2 spots. A lot of ways we could go here. We could pay all the way up to the top for Nick Chubb. I don't know what that would leave us left. That would leave us enough to play Willie Snead. Like I said earlier, I think Willie Snead's a guy I'll probably be avoiding. I probably don't want to go that route. If we play Jarvis Landry, that leaves us enough to play Rashad Higgins, but Rashad Higgins, kind of similar to Willie Snead, just not a guy that I feel confident in at his price tag. If we drop down to Mark Andrews, that leaves us enough to play Kareem Hunt. That's something I'm fine doing. I don't mind Kareem Hunt here at 7,200. He is my preferred Browns running back to roster, just given the savings and the fact that he'll probably see close to the same amount of touches that Nick Chubb does, if not a little bit less. We at least know that Kareem Hunt will be involved in the passing game, and that is very valuable on DraftKings given the full PPR scoring. Plus, I think the Browns favored in this game? No, the Browns are dogs in this game. Maybe they get behind and we see Kareem Hunt play a little bit more. Obviously, Kareem Hunt's the pass down back, so if they're down and they're playing catch up, which could happen, we could see a little bit more Kareem Hunt than you would expect. You could see him on the field more than Nick Chubb. So I don't mind playing Kareem Hunt, especially if he fits into the bill, which he does in this case. So that's kind of a build that I like. You got Hollywood Brown at captain with Lamar Jackson. You got Baker Mayfield, David Njoku, Mark Andrews, Kareem Hunt. Really, your wild card there is David Njoku. I mean, if he gives you 6, 7, 8 points, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape as long as Kareem Hunt doesn't bottom out or anything. I mean, Kareem Hunt's been bad lately. 3 straight games with under double digits, but this is still a guy that's going to get a good amount of volume, going to get work in the passing game. Even though he's a backup running back, the Browns just involve both these 2 guys so much that I'm fine playing them. Normally I don't play backup running backs, but this is obviously a totally different scenario when you have Hunt getting 15, 16 touches and you have Chubb getting 18, 19, 20 touches. They are both playable in that case. But yeah, guys, I think that's kind of it for roster construction. I mean, tough slate. Really, really tough slate when it comes to roster construction. The value is so thin. A lot of guys have been priced up to where it's really tough. You're probably going to be playing one of the 2 kickers. I would not be surprised to see one of the 2 kickers in the winning lineup. I would not be surprised to see, I wouldn't be surprised to see, if someone down here scores 7, 8 points, they could easily make the winning lineup just because probably no one under 4K is going to get that much. Maybe the defenses will, maybe the kickers will, but, if you get 2 catches, 20 yards, and a touchdown from David Njoku, you should be thrilled. He's very likely to make the winning lineup in that case, or even a guy like Boykin or Duvernay if they do that, which probably won't happen just because with Willie Snead back, obviously Boykin, Duvernay both going to lose playing time, but I guess Dez is out, so you'll probably see Boykin on the field a decent amount, but still, Hollywood Brown, Willie Snead, those are going to be the 2, kind of every down receivers for the Ravens, so Boykin, Duvernay are just dart throws at best. If Mark Ingram scores a goal line touchdown, then maybe he makes the winning lineup, because if he gets 7 or 8 points, that could be good enough, just given how bad the value is. But I said it earlier, my favorite punt value under 4K, definitely my boy David Njoku at $1,000. But yeah, guys, I think we broke everything down for this Monday night slate. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. I do appreciate you watching. If you enjoyed, hit that like button before you get out of here. Hit the subscribe button as well. Be sure to click that notification bell so that way you do get notified every time I upload. You'll never miss out on any of my new videos. And if you do really enjoy my videos, if they help you out a lot, and you want to get more content from me, be sure to check out my Patreon, link down below in the description. I do have a lot more content available on Patreon. If that's something that interests you, you can check that out, link down below. But best of luck on this slate, guys. I appreciate you watching the video. Hope you win some money, and we will see you in the next one. Good luck, guys. Peace.